Who's got the first question? I'm sure you have some. Okay, in the back. Let's try without microphones, I think, instead of running around. Just if you can speak loudly and say who you are. Yeah.
I'm Peggy Webster. I'm a clinical psychologist at Hampton Children's Services. I've really enjoyed the presentation. It's been really helpful, really interesting. I guess I was interested in how we're talking about heterosexual couples, and I wonder if you have any research in same-sex couples or LGBT sort of more broadly in this area of commercial control.
Well, I'll answer this as quickly as I can. I believe that the dynamics, our son is transgender, and I've done a lot of research on transgender relationships as well as same-sex use. There is a lot of coercive control in male on male, female on male, female on female. What I believe is that the far and away the most prevalent form is, as Emma described it and I did, heterosexual relationships, male on female. But the reason for that, I believe, and even though I loved Emma's slide, and I wish I'm going to ask her to steal it, the Adidas ad, but the reason even though I do believe that the propaganda for men to identify control with masculinity is enormous socialization, I do not believe women are less controlling than men. I've got a lot of women in my life, and the data shows that when women are jealous and women in relationships, control is just as important a motive as it is for men. And we know from over 100 studies that women hit men as much as men hit women. Having said that, all of the frequency data that I was referring to show that this kind of pattern we're talking about as violence is gendered. Basically 50% of the men that police are arresting have been arrested for 3 or more offenses. About 2 or 3% of women have been arrested. So the more than one offense. So the frequency is gendered. The other thing I believe, and Emma just touched on this briefly, I would underline it. The reason coercive control is used overwhelmingly by men against women and not by women against men is because of inequality. It's as simple and basic as that. And I know while it may sound kind of strange to talk to a social work audience who's involved in child welfare about issues like inequality and justice and say that those matter for health, I would underline it enormously. And I would say it's because men can do it. And the coercive control that we're describing particularly has a sexual dimension. Emma described some of it in terms of the physical nature of the injuries, but it also extends throughout the entire relationship. I'm sorry to take so much on this, but the focus on the gender roles is uniquely male to female. In other words, the enactment of all that. The extent to which sexual coercion is a component of it is much less common in same-sex relationships. But what I would say is coercive control in any other type of relationship is there, can be devastating, needs to be identified, but it also needs to be explained by dynamics particular to that kind of relationship, whether it's age-related or homophobic-related, whatever the encounter, the target of bias is going to be somewhat distinct.
So any other comments to the panel that would like to make, or should we move on? Let's move on. Okay, another question. Here in the front.
You're talking about specialised treatment of perpetrators, and only people who are sort of qualified to do so should be treating perpetrators. I wondered what facilities we have in this sort of borough for that kind of treatment, and how effective it is, how long the treatment has to go on for.
And who
Sorry, I'm an A&E doctor at one of the local hospitals.
Great. Local response first.
Hiya, happy International Women's Day, everybody. Have to say that. So we have a number of different, and over the years we've had a number of different specialist interventions available across the 3 boroughs. And I am, I'm discouraged to say that I think currently our levels are lower than they have been previously due to a number of different reasons, mostly funding related issues. However, we do have a Respect accredited. Respect is sort of the national sort of governing and accrediting body for perpetrator work in the UK. And we have the Domestic Violence Intervention Project, DVIP, who's long-term based in Hammersmith and has had a number of different programs and pilots throughout the Tri-Borough over the last few years. One of our current projects that we have is a co-location of specialist domestic violence perpetrator workers and also independent domestic violence advisors within family services in Hammersmith and Fulham. This has been a recently evaluated project that has shown to do a few things. First of all, to identify and to help identify within children's services, in particular early years, to help identify more cases of domestic abuse where it's going on and identify them in earlier stages. It has got those families into dual specialist support, as Evan and Emma were talking about. So not just support for perpetrators and looking at holding them accountable in interventions with fathers, but also that support for mothers as well. So doing that in sort of a parallel way. And so we've been able to introduce that into families. And I think the third benefit of that co-location within a statutory or universal kind of tier 1, tier 2 service is that the increase in confidence amongst the staff. Is there anyone here who's benefited? Do we have any social workers in the room that's benefited from the co-location of DVIP in Advance in Hammersmith and Fulham? Oh, or in Westminster, for that matter. Kensington. Anyone? Any takers for Kensington? There you go. All right. I think what the evaluation of the project in Hammersmith basically said was this increased confidence of staff being able to identify and work with particularly perpetrators and the abusive partners in the families. So at the moment, a lot of our work, or pretty much our work, is concentrated in co-location within family and children's services, and we're looking to sort of maintain that as much as we can. We've had pilots within the police, so co-locating perpetrator specialists within the police to identify and work with them at earlier stages, particularly for those who aren't going to be charged. We've also had pilots where we locate these specialist workers within youth offending, sort of to deal with or to identify child-to-parent abuse, particularly with teenagers, and intervene earlier. We also have a specialist service here, particularly in Kensington, also run by the Domestic Violence Intervention Project called Al-Aman, and that's in particular to work with Arabic-speaking men. And they do, the idea of what's been sort of evaluated, tried and tested in this country is the idea of group work. So long-term, 27-plus week group work for perpetrators around a variety of things, which includes gender and gender identity. What Al-Aman does is provide one-to-one work, and a lot of the national pilots and the national work around perpetrators is moving in this sort of, with the DRIVE project sponsored by Safe Lives, some of the work that's going on in Southwark at the moment, looking at individual and bespoke responses to perpetrators, and that's hopefully something we can bring to the Tri-Borough. In a healthcare context, maybe we can have a chat.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, thank you both very much for both thoughts, which I thought were absolutely fascinating, interesting, and continues to add to our understanding of domestic abuse and coercive control. But I do also want to say that as a social workforce, I think what I thought this morning is that the speech is, whilst fascinating, was slightly de-skilling, and also listening to you, Megan, talking about all the specialist services are slightly de-skilling in thinking that these are very complex issues, and because of that we need a response which understands that complexity. And for many years we've worked in quite a linear way within the child protection system, which is based on escalation and on the legal framework. And what we're trying to introduce through our systemic practice model and our focus on practice is a more sophisticated understanding of what's going on in families, and a way of approaching families and trying to keep families together, actually, because for us as a workforce, it's no point thinking we can just get rid of the men. We can't. They come back in different ways, and some of the women we work with get back into the relationships with similar patterns that they had before. So we have to work with the whole family. We can't send everybody off on 27 or 36 week specialist interventions because we're dealing with it right now. So I suppose I just wanted to have a message to say I think that what social workers and other people in family services do is highly skilled work, is very complex. We are all the time working to understand that complexity and to provide a good response to that. And we understand risk and violence and issues of control, power and control come up with lots of families that we work with, and I am always impressed by the work that our frontline do. So I want to say to you, just because we're not specialists doesn't mean that we don't know what we're doing. These talks are fascinating and interesting, and they help our understanding, but I don't want people to think everything we're doing has been useless up until now. So let's sort of be clear, you know?
Absolutely not. I think a good worker of any kind, whether they're a social worker or what service they come from, but a good social worker is so incredible as a support. You know, some of the mums I talked to have said, you know, this social worker saved my life, she understood me, she learnt my needs, she helped me, she, you know, helped me to become empowered. So a good worker, no matter what service they're coming from, is invaluable.
I'm a social worker. I've worked in this field for 50 years. I've directed the largest child protection agency in the world. So when I say what I say about the failures of our understanding of these couples, I am talking about myself and the social workers who I have worked with and whose courage and respect on a daily basis I have never seen equaled in terms of what they approach. On the other hand, I do not say that we should be as our aim, and it has never been the aim of social work in the area of abuse, to keep families together. I believe the best and strongest family statement we can make is a statement of accountability. And what the criminal law in England now says is that men are to be held accountable, or abusers, depending on whether the Parliament passes the Istanbul Convention, that abusers are to be held accountable for subordinating parents, mothers, or children, and that you cannot have a healthy functioning family if a completely equal status person, the woman, or a child, is denied basic rights and liberties, that they cannot grow up safely. And therefore, it is now our responsibility, which it was not even 2 years ago, to liaison with police and with the authorities when we see injustice and subordination, because we now recognize the harm of subordination, not just the harm of physical violence. This is in no way de-skilling social work to argue that in addition to the psychological and emotional decisions that we have to make that are difficult every day based on our knowledge, we also can call into play our feelings of injustice and rightlessness and use them because they have enormous relevance to the health and safety of families. The fact that these men will be back in the community, yes, they will be. But if, and this goes to the question about specialist services for men, the answer to your question is that specialist services for men do not work in isolation. That is, a man who goes to a specialist service and then goes back into a community whose normative message is that it's okay and you don't have to tell accountable is not going to help him. A man who goes to the same service, who goes and is told either by being handcuffed and charged or by a broader message in the community that you cannot continue to subordinate people no matter what you may feel about Adidas sneakers or property rights, this is something that's changed. That man will change. In other words, it is the combination of accountability. And I think what we're saying is that in addition to the complex and wonderful competencies that you bring to the table, we are now asking for a new competency, not just in you individually, but in the supervision and in the agencies as a whole, the statutory as well as the non-statutory agencies as a whole, a new competency in understanding the coercive control, that the women we're working with are protecting children in a context, maybe protecting children, in ways that are invisible to us because all we see is their victimization. And so we are now going to ask you to, maybe you're doing this already as part of your skill set, in which case our message is wasted. But we are now also asking you to document the many ways in which women are protecting, in which they are making decisions, some of which look very bad to you because of the constrained choices under which they're operating, not only their own limits. There is the gold standard that we're asking for. The gold standard is accountability of the perpetrator, supporting even if that means liaisoning with police and authorities, the support and identification of the protective role that many women are playing as mothers even if those protections sometimes don't look like protections because of the context in which they're operating, and then the broader norm change that we hope will make your work not only easier but safer. So these are changes we're asking for, and it in no way diminishes your skills to suggest that you're capable of making those changes. It was a big shock to me. I work on the front lines, and I have been responsible for moving in my career probably 5,000 children, both in all kinds of settings, and my workers have done so. I now look back on many of those cases, and I realize the dynamics that I missed. I can hear those voices now and see them in a new way. When I went down into the basement of one of my clients' houses and saw that she had put the baby, left the baby in a diaper down in the basement, which was not even accessible from the house, but only from a place outside of the house, I took that child into care. I had that child placed in care, and I asked the mother what was going on. She acted like she had no idea it was bad for the baby. I put that child into care. Going back now, 25 years later, after that removal, I now understand that the reason the child was in that basement was because her partner, Miguel Sebastian, I talked about that case, Miguel Sebastian hated that child. And putting that child in the basement, and even the fact that the basement wasn't accessible from the house, meant Miguel couldn't get at that child. And now that face haunts me. And I realized that if I had gone back and understood then what we all say that, right? If I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have done that. So we're not suggesting in any way a disrespect for what you do on a daily basis, but we are asking you to think politically about power, not just about.
Yeah, no, I didn't think you were suggesting that in any way. I got it that you were a social worker, so. But it's an extra. I think you've answered it perfectly, which is it's an add-on to what we're doing already, rather than it's an increased understanding rather than an alternative way.
I think it's a positive thing to constantly evolve in your work and to learn more. That's what we're all here for. And thank you, Evan. I have not heard a justification and a support for our coordinated community response in a long time as eloquently put as that. It's not just about social workers, but it's about social workers, police, housing, specialist services, all working together. And that's hopefully the ultimate sort of ethos and the objectives of how we're working here in the Tri-Borough.
Absolutely. If you change one element of the response and the others remain the same, things get worse. If you tell a woman to go to court or go call the police and they don't respond and the court doesn't give a protection order, he's going to hurt her worse. So the whole system has to be at your back.
And it's also the like say the wider norms and values in our society. A friend of mine who's like 22, 23-year-old white girl from a middle class family in a nice country village. Her boyfriend threw her out of a moving car, and she went and she told her mum and dad, and her mum and dad said, don't break up with him because, you know, he's about to ask you to marry him. So wait till next week when he does that. What the hell? You know, so the messages that people are getting from their families, from the people they talk to about this stuff, because we don't talk to professionals half as much as we talk to our family and friends. The messages from family and friends are also so important in shifting some of these attitudes.
Just to say, I mean, in terms of, for those of you who are maybe new to Standing Together and the work that we do, I would just echo a lot what Megan said. Obviously, our perception of what we do, any person who works at Standing Together, is definitely working in partnership with you as colleagues to support and think about the ways we work together. And so I hope you feel that. I feel confident you would probably feel that day to day. It's certainly the intention of all of the work that we